Hi, welcome to the Kindle Chronicles. Today is September 4th, 2020. I am Len Edgerly, your host, episode 631, and we are still in Ocean Park, Maine. Almost a full moon out above the ocean as I look out the window here from the cottage. This week's guest, Brad Parks, is an author that I hope you're going to enjoy hearing from. He has a new thriller out this week from Thomas & Mercer, the imprint of Amazon Publishing that does thrillers and mysteries. It's a good book. I've enjoyed reading it so far. I haven't quite finished it, but it's really a great story. It's what you call a page-turner for sure. And also, there's an aspect of Brad's story which involves his switch from one of the big five publishers, Penguin Random House, to Amazon Publishing. He signed a contract last year, and this is the first book that he has published with Amazon. So it's a nice test case to compare what it's like with a traditional publisher versus Amazon Publishing. I also have some news stories for you. We'll talk about drones. We'll talk about perhaps new life for the Nook, and a heartwarming story about an Amazon driver in Ohio. Also a couple of tech tips, Fire TV Stick, and then also how you can have Alexa not bother you at night if maybe she's giving you notifications that you don't need when you're trying to sleep. Let's get started. First up in news is an item that was referred to me by Szymon Schott in Poland, in Krakow. He found it in interestingengineering.com, an article September 1st by Duria Odzamir. It's about the Federal Aviation Administration here in the U.S., the FAA, has certified Amazon's Prime Air as a drone airline in the U.S. Now, this is a long-running effort by Amazon to get to where packages can be delivered by drones. It was first announced on 60 Minutes with Charlie Rose. Jeff Bezos was giving him a pretty dramatic demonstration of it. That was back in 2013. And I remember there were some doubters that said, oh, this is just a publicity stunt. You know, they're not going to do anything. Amazon has been working pretty seriously on this now for 7 years, including tests in the UK. And with this move by the FAA in the US, actual deliveries of packages is still a few years away, according to this article. The article also says Amazon has test sites in the Northwest U.S. and the Vancouver area. That's from a Bloomberg story. An Amazon vice president named David Carbon is quoted in this article saying this certification is an important step forward for Prime Air and indicates the FAA's confidence in Amazon's operating and safety procedures for an autonomous drone delivery service that will one day deliver packages to our customers around the world. The article says that Amazon's next goal is to develop an electric drone that can fly up to 15 miles with packages weighing as much as 5 pounds, with trips lasting 30 minutes or less. Well, Ocean Park would be a good place for drone delivery. You could sort of fly in over the beach and then just drop down on the lawn in front of the cottage. That would be fun to imagine someday. Second story comes from Joanna Penn's Creative Penn podcast that I listened to. And by the way, I'll have a link to this episode in the show notes because it also has the interview that Joanna recorded with me several weeks ago. We had a wide-ranging conversation about the history of the Kindle and Amazon. We got into a little bit of a debate on Amazon's role in the publishing industry, and I find her just to be an excellent interviewer, and it was a little bit eerie and disorienting to be on the other side of the conversation. And when I got her email saying the podcast is up, that's what I always tell my guests when the podcast is up and they can hear the interview. I will admit to having some trepidation. I say, oh, gosh, I hope I made sense in talking for that long about these topics. And as I listened to it, I enjoyed it. And, you know, I thought that, and I sent this to her in an email I sent, if I had known that the person talking about on this show was me, I'd say that person sounds relaxed, like he believes that he's in good hands, he's being interviewed by someone he can trust and is going to treat him fairly, give him a chance to express his views and have some back and forth. So that might be a way to measure an interviewer, is how the person interviewed comes forth. Do they come forth in a natural way, in a confident way, in a way that, we all tend to do a little better when we think we're in a safe and understanding and intelligent environment. That's certainly the way I felt with Joanna Penn. Anyway, Joanna is, her podcast, that episode is where I heard about this story from goodereader.com, Michael Kozlowski, reporting that the new head of Barnes & Noble, James Daunt, who was also head of Waterstones in the UK, is talking up the Nook. And the Nook has pretty much been laid to rest, or is certainly not invested. It generated, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars in losses for Barnes & Noble previously. But now he's talking about thinking it's a good thing, and this is in the midst of remodeling stores during the pandemic so that they have more of an independent identity. There's not so much central control out of New York. This all sounds pretty positive. The quote in Kozlowski's blog post dated August 21st from Daunt says, "I absolutely love Nook, and I think my predecessors had fallen out of love with it. It's underpromoted to our customers. It became the sort of wayward child that had become embarrassing. But if you want to read digitally, the app is fantastic. I am a champion of digital books and digital book retailing, but above and beyond that, I'm a champion of reading. There are many reasons why people want to read digitally, but Nook needs to be much better supported within the Barnes & Noble ecosystem." I think this is interesting that he mentions the app. He says the app is fantastic. I guess it would be surprising to me if he thought that the Nook itself, the hardware device, could be revived and in any way compete with the Kindle, which has such a dominant position among e-readers, especially in the U.S. But if the app was spiced up and if there were decisions made about e-books, that could be a pretty smart strategy, because if you have a Nook app on your iPhone or your Android phone or your iPad or your tablet or even your computer, you have a way to read books that you buy on the Nook without having to have an actual hardware device. So this will be interesting to watch. I think it's a sign of strength in the ebook sector, which I like, and competition is certainly a good thing. I don't expect there's going to be much of a dent in the Kindle's dominance from this, but very interesting to see what comes next. Last news story came to me via John Sullivan. It's a local news story that was carried September 2nd in the Dayton Daily News, written by Kristen Spicker. And it's about an Amazon driver, Charles Rucker, who in the course of doing his deliveries found a 2-year-old girl. It turns out she had been in a stolen car, and the car had been abandoned on the side of the road. This is in Harrison Township, Ohio, on the evening of August 27th. And Mr. Rucker said, "I thank the Lord he put me in that spot at that time. It was a blessing." So what happened was he found the girl, Haley Wood, in her car seat in the car. He called 911. He just didn't know what was happening, that somebody had just abandoned this child in a car. Waited for the police, and that's when it became evident that the car had been stolen with the girl inside. So the police reunited her with her parents, and she was safe, and everybody was, glad for the conclusion of the story. Rucker appropriately works for a company named R&L Hero Delivery, which delivers packages for Amazon. And the nice bit of local news reporting in this article about how he comforted the girl while waiting for the police, and he was a grandfather himself, and there was no way he was going to leave that girl until he got to the bottom of what had happened. So good job by Charles Rucker, an Amazon delivery person, and a good story from the Dayton Daily News. Thanks to John for sending that to me. I've got a couple of tech tips for you. The first I got from the Recommendo weekly newsletter that Kevin Kelly and some of his associates puts out I think it comes out on Sunday. Boy, it's just a delight. It has all of these great ideas about all the technology and websites. And this one caught my eye. It's called Fire TV Stick 4K. And one of his associates writes that she bought the original Fire TV Stick when it first came out a few years ago, as did I. When the HD version with a voice-activated remote control came out a couple of years later, I bought that, and I appreciated the extra speak and talk to search feature. Amazon recently released the Fire TV Stick 4K. The remote comes with volume controls and an on-off button for the TV, so I don't need to use the TV remote anymore. I didn't realize that the Fire TV Stick had that kind of a controller. I really love using just one remote on our Fire TV Edition Toshiba. And she says it's also much faster than the previous versions of the Fire TV Stick, a worthy upgrade. So if you've been thinking about getting Fire TV capability on a TV that doesn't have Fire TV built into it, it looks like the latest version of the Fire TV Stick might be a good option. Mark Roberts wrote me an email. It was sort of a two-part email. The first part was a plea for help. He says, there's so much info about Alexa, and yet they don't tell us what we want to know. How do you keep Alexa from waking you up at 7 a.m. to tell you there will be a delivery today? Well, Mark is resourceful. He found the answer himself in an article in Wired from 2019. The title is How to Shut Up Your Gadgets at Night So You Can Sleep. It's by David Neild. It has tips about notifications from smartphones, your computer, all kinds of devices that might be keeping you awake at night if you don't know how to control them. And then there's a section on smart speakers, including the Google Home. The operative part of it for the Echo says that the way to make sure that you aren't getting any notifications that you don't want in the night or otherwise is to open the Alexa app on your phone, and then you tap on devices, then you tap on Echo and Alexa. Then you need to know the name of the speaker. Now, I have so many Echo devices that sometimes I forget what the name of any individual speaker is, and the way to find out is just say, Alexa, what is the name of this device? And she'll tell you. So the Echo Show that I've got here on my desk is called Hooper Upstairs. We call it the Hooper Cottage. So when I go to the settings for that device, then there's a Do Not Disturb section, and if it's simply on, it means it won't disturb me except for alarms and timers. In other words, if I have a delivery coming, it's not going to kind of do a beep and make any kind of noise telling me that there's a delivery, which is apparently what was bothering Mark at 7 in the morning. You can also set it for on and then choose scheduled times. So you could maybe say, don't bother me between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. I've just got mine set to leave it on so that the Do Not Disturb is on. So this particular device, which is in the bedroom here, also doubles as the podcast studio. It's never going to be giving us noises at night that will be disruptive. The Wired article also notes that you can put any of your devices into whisper mode. I kind of like that. And sometimes I have used that here because I've got the Echo Show controlling two of the lights in this room. But if I want to turn the lights off after Darlene and Sophie, our little puppy, have gone to sleep, I can just go right up to Alexa and I can say, Alexa, turn on whisper mode. And well, no, I've already turned on whisper mode, so if I whisper to her, she will whisper back, and it'll help somebody who's sleeping in the room. So that's kind of handy. I think you can set all of your devices to whisper mode if you go to settings and then voice responses and then just turn on whisper mode. I think if you did that, then all of the ones that you've got in your system would have whisper mode. So that's pretty handy. Time now for the interview. Best-selling author Brad Parks is the only writer to have won the Seamus, Nero, and Lefty Awards, three of American crime fiction's biggest prizes. Upon graduation from Dartmouth, he became the then youngest writer to be hired as a reporter at the Washington Post. 2 years after that, he moved to the Newark, New Jersey Star-Ledger. Brad left journalism to write fiction full-time in 2008. The year after that, his novel Faces of the Gone sold through its first print run in 9 days and went on to win the Nero and Shamus Awards for Best First Mystery, making him the only author in the combined 60-year history of those awards to win both prizes for the same book. He continued the adventures of his protagonist, an investigative reporter named Carter Ross, through a total of 6 novels. In 2017, he began publishing standalone novels, beginning with Say Nothing and continuing with Closer Than You Know, published in 2018. That's when he first joined us as a guest on the podcast. Last year, Brad switched from the Dutton imprint of Penguin Random House to Thomas and Mercer, the mystery thriller imprint of Amazon Publishing. And this week, his latest standalone thriller, Interference, was released on September 1st. I spoke with Brad in Virginia by Skype the day after the publication date and began by congratulating him on the birth of his new book.
Yeah, it's the big book birthday. Always the biggest day of the year.
Well, you've had a lot of big book birthdays, and this is the first one with Thomas and Mercer, the imprint of Amazon. I think when we talked last, a couple of years ago, you had a book that just came out from Dutton.
Right.
What were the 2 days like in 2 very different publishers?
See, I don't know if I can compare the publishers because one was pre-pandemic and the other was post-pandemic. So, normally I have this wonderful library friends group that has launched a number of my books. They're just a great kind of high-energy group of folks, and they all come out on a Tuesday night, and we used to gather in this old church. And, we'd have pizza and whatever, and I'd sign books and talk about it, and we'd have a good old time. And that was launch day, no matter who the publisher was. Because before Dutton, I had been with St. Martin's Press. And so I can't quite compare that experience to Zooming from my bedroom, which is what I did last night.
So you met with the same people that you always have, but it was by Zoom this time.
Right, exactly. And I knew I was missing some people because, that group, it's a library friends group. There are a lot of folks that are older. They're not necessarily digital natives. So I think probably some of my longtime friends and fans were not with me last night. But the trade-offs we make during this pandemic time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about the book. Matt, is it Bronic or Bronic?
Bronic, yeah.
Bronic.
Yep.
Who is he and what's he up against in this story?
So Matt Bronic is a physics professor at Dartmouth College who is prodding the mysteries of the quantum universe. And unfortunately, for reasons he doesn't entirely understand, and there's a lot about quantum physics we don't understand, Len, it's making him sick. He has been trying to manipulate a virus and lure it into a quantum state. And in the process of this, he has actually mutated the virus, and it appears to be making him sick. Now, I don't know if you can imagine this, Len, but can you imagine a novel virus making us sick that our immune systems have never encountered before? I mean, this is clearly something that nobody can imagine the consequences of. And of course, I mean, I'm making light of this. I shouldn't. I wrote this pre-COVID. I can remember when I was writing it thinking, like, wow, would people really understand what that is, like a truly new virus and what that would do to our immune system? And, and I didn't hit it that hard in the book because, it was kind of one of a number of subplots. But I always remember writing it thinking, I wonder if I really developed that idea enough. I'm glad I didn't develop that idea more because I think of all the things in the book, the readers get that for sure by now.
Right. And without the pandemic, you might have had to work harder to make it credible, but the pandemic sort of did the lifting for you there.
Exactly.
Huh.
So he is plunging into these mysterious seizures. He does not know why, and then things get steadily worse for him from there. Because shouldn't they always get worse for your characters?
Yeah, that's the specialty. Your book's been described as an action thriller, a scientific exploration, and a love story. Three pretty exciting things to have in the same story.
Right.
Was one of those three more challenging for you or more fun, or how did those three weave together for you as the author?
So I had arguably done the action thriller and the love story before. Those had been elements in my past book. The science was new. And trying to credibly work in the science and make it kind of jive with the plot was definitely a challenge, but also making it relatable and explainable. That was very important to me. I'm a geek, right? But I'm a geek who was never actually good at the science itself. If you can follow that, what I always loved was the ideas of the science and the storytelling that went with the science and who were these scientists doing it, right? And that was the part I wanted to bring to life, and that was the real challenge. And quantum physics it's mind-bending, frankly, and it's hard to explain sometimes. It's hard to understand, even for the people who do it. They really struggle. So it was really important to me to keep that on a level that no matter what your science background, you were going to be following along and you were going to be okay with it. And so that was probably my greatest challenge. And if I have something I'm proud of about the book, that might be it. I feel like I got all the science right. I have a dear friend of mine is a physics professor at MIT, who has been one of the original researchers doing a lot of this science. And he was kind enough to read the book for me. And kind of look, I'm sure I didn't get it 100% kosher where it would pass the review of other physics professors, but for a piece of popular fiction, he said I did just fine.
That's great.
So that was important to me as well.
Well, there's one part in what I've read so far, the character who is the New Hampshire State Policeman, Emmett, what's his last name?
Emmett Webster, yeah.
Webster. And there's a great scene where the physics professor who, let's see, I think it's Matt Bronic's associate or his mentor, is explaining to this New Hampshire State Policeman aspects of the quantum physics which are now bearing on this disappearance. And Emmett has to understand in order to find actions to take to find the missing person. But I thought that was sort of genius to because the reader, I think, relates to Emmett. And Emmett is sort of trying to reach up to understand the physics. The other guy is, I won't say reaching down, but making this stuff understandable enough so it's actionable to solve a crime. But that was, I imagine that was conscious, just to give that as a weight.
Yeah, well, yes, Len, you've tripped upon one of the cheapest tricks in the author's book, which is, you take a character who is expert in something and make them explain their expertise to a layperson. Knowing that that's what the reader is too. Yeah. Because normally, would a professor of physics, if he or she was talking to another professor of physics, would he or she break down and say, okay, this is Newtonian or classical physics. No, they would never speak that way. They would be speaking on a level that you couldn't understand, I couldn't understand. And, and if I was in any way representing that dialogue faithfully or accurately, it would be baffling. But, yes, when talking to a cop, he's going to kind of slow it down and say, okay, this is what makes sense. Yeah, one of my in that particular piece of dialogue, if you're talking about the same one I was I'm thinking about right now, the physics professor sits the cop down and asks him, hey, do you know what the X in X-ray stands for?
That was great.
Right? Yeah, and the cop says no, and this is where the physicist says, yeah, well, neither did the scientists who invented it, right? Like, they had no idea. What is this thing? Why is it when we pass a certain light in through people's arm, we can see their bones? How? Imagine for the first time seeing that effect. Yeah. And you're the scientist going, what the heck is going on? I don't know what this... Okay, well, let's just call it X-ray. And then we'll figure out what it is. And here we are 150 years later still calling them X-rays, right? And there's all sorts of stuff like that throughout the history of science where, we discover things and we're just trying to make sense out of them. And I think that's what I love about scientific discovery is, on some level, it is always human beings telling stories, trying to explain their world. And I'm always in for that. I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, and it makes it approachable. They're fellow explorers of reality, doing it in some very precise areas. But that makes sense. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before, when I checked, Interference was number 5 among all titles on the Kindle store. And this was the day before it was published.
Right.
It had an average rating of 4.5 stars based on 818 reviews. That's a lot of reviews. How did it become a bestseller before publication day?
Well, you must be aware of the Amazon First Reads program, Len. If you're doing the Kindle Chronicles, you know this game. So yes, for those who don't know, Amazon every month offers to Amazon Prime households the chance to download one book for free, right? And that is what they've really done is create this a huge community of readers, because there's tens of millions of Amazon Prime households, and not everybody obviously takes advantage of that, or even is aware of it. Probably, a number of people I've talked to go, oh yeah, I'm Amazon Prime, I don't get those emails, right? Because Amazon has rules about how many emails they'll send you, so they might not send you the Amazon Prime, the Amazon First Reads email, but among the people who have become fans and followers of it, it's this really cool thing of what's more fun than not only just reading a book, but then being able to talk about the same book with somebody else who's read it. And I think we can look throughout publishing and see certain...
And you get it a month early. That, like, you're reading it before everybody else.
Yeah, and get it a month early, and that's cool. But I think, like, just having a huge, like, so, it always varies month to month, but each Amazon First Reads title gets downloaded hundreds of thousands of times, right? And it's remarkable, and I think there are groups of readers out there who know that. All right, a lot of other people have read this book too. Let's talk about it, and people enjoy talking about books. So Amazon has really created this awesome gathering of readers who will then talk about, oh, did you read this First Reads or that First Reads? And then if you missed a book that people are buzzing about, you'll probably go back and check it out and whatnot. So it's a neat thing they've created. It's like the world's largest book club.
Yeah, and Goodreads is a big part of that. I saw there was a giveaway of 100 books, and there were 1,531 entrants for it, including me. I didn't get the free book, but I knew I'd have access to it. And there people are talking about it as they've been reading it in advance. A lot of overlap, so there's quite an echo chamber.
Right, which is great, and that's the whole game from a publisher's standpoint is, can you get people talking about a book?
Yeah,
because on some level, word of mouth is some of the best rocket fuel for a book. Because hey, have you read this? No, I haven't. Boom, there you go. That's going to make you want to read something.
Was getting chosen for First Reads part of your discussions with them a year ago when you decided to go with Thomas and Mercer, or was that just a nice thing that happened once you had made the decision to have the new contract with Thomas and Mercer?
Well, of course, nothing is simple at Amazon, Len. It started in Jeff Bezos' garage, and now 25 years later, it's a $1.5 trillion company with nearly 1 million people working for it, right? So it's got a lot of moving parts. So it's this funny thing when you sign with Amazon Publishing with Thomas and Mercer, they say, yeah, we'll recommend your book for First Reads, but we don't have direct control over whether it gets selected, because Amazon First Reads is its own little shop within Amazon that makes its own decisions independently. So I certainly hoped I would get selected, because what an awesome piece of exposure it is to have your book downloaded several 100,000 times. But I had no guarantees.
Well, and the First Reads are all Amazon Publishing titles, as I understand it.
Correct.
So, but it isn't the Amazon Publishing team that chooses which of their titles to highlight? It's somebody kind of independent?
It is a completely separate group within Amazon.
There's a Nobel committee within Amazon that makes that important choice.
Which is, hey, keeps everybody on their toes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, now, I've talked with Dean Koontz about his shift from Penguin Random House to Amazon Publishing. I think he's published by Thomas & Mercer as well, isn't he? Yeah. And he's a lot older.
I was going to say, Dean and I are in different stages of life and different stages of the career, but
still a nice path to follow. And he was interesting because he was talking about, first of all, I think he's in his 70s. Everybody seemed young at Amazon Publishing. The marketing plan he described as sort of mind-blowing when he saw what they were going to do to market his books. And then he said that it sparked kind of a creative rejuvenation for him to just be in a different publishing environment. It's not so much I'm sure has nothing but high praise for everything that his previous publisher had done for him, but to have moved from one world to the other, he was highlighting the youth of the team, the marketing, the speed, and then I think he had something to say. Amazon as a company and Amazon Publishing as part of it, they just sort of know how to handle change. Right. What would be your description of having now lived in both worlds and sort of telling what you
it's interesting because there's certainly a lot of young people at Penguin Random House too, right? Publishing is a young person's game. That is just the nature of it. I once had an agent who observed that the reason he became an agent, he used to be an editor, was that every editor he ever saw was fired by the age of 52. Because at publishing houses, here I'm talking about the big five, most editors get to a point where they're getting paid enough money, and then something happens to the publishing house where suddenly revenues are not looking great, and they start looking around and they say, all right, who are we going to cut? Are we going to cut the 24-year-old that we're paying $30,000 a year, or are we going to cut the 50-year-old who we finally are paying a living wage to, right? And those 50-year-olds get just excised all the time. You do not find a lot of old people in publishing. But that said, I see exactly what Dean is talking about, in as much as there's a lot that happens in Big Five publishing, and I'm in no way going to badmouth Big Five publishing, and neither would Dean, of course. I mean, Dean Koontz had a wonderful ride. He had the ideal experience you could ever want from Big Five publishing, right? But it definitely is different. So you get your marketing plan from the Big Five, and that marketing plan is decided on 6 months ahead of time, right? And at Amazon, they seem to make decisions about 6 days ahead of time. It's a very different, and so when I first got my quote marketing plan from Amazon, it was kind of where are the specifics, and they only gave it to me about a month or two before the book launched, and I'm thinking, what, this is your marketing? What's going on? So I panicked. I call up my editor, what is this thing? What's going on? Why are they? And it's because they really don't decide on specifics until right up close to, when the book is out, and they base it on, okay, who is getting excited by this book? I mean, Amazon knows everything about you, of course, and a lot of it is proprietary. So a lot of this is stuff that not only do I not get to know, my editor doesn't get to know, because of the Amazon terms of service and privacy, and that they can only share certain things within the team, and other things cannot be shared. So it's a bit shrouded in mystery, and I'm sure Dean found this too. But they really do want to see, okay, this book interference. Who is liking this book? What are these people like? And can we very specifically target our marketing pitch to people we think will be likely to like it, right? And in that way, they can be so much more precise than the Big Five can. The Big Five kind of has to throw out this big net, because here's the fundamental difference, I think, between Amazon and the Big Five. The Big Five always has an intermediary between it and the consumer, right? It always has, Barnes and Noble or the independent bookstore, or on another, the reviewer from the New York Times, who is going to put out a review that millions of people will see or whatnot. With Amazon, it's not that way. Amazon has your email address. Amazon knows everything about you, your spending habits, your demographics, and if Amazon wants to reach you, it just sends you an email, right? And so, because of that, that extra layer is not there. And so the Big Five is always reliant on someone else buying in. Whereas at Amazon, if they've bought in, they're good to go. And certainly, a lot of authors have had that experience of, man, when Amazon decides to push your book, guess what? Your book's going to sell a lot. And that's a really exciting thing. And I think with the Big Five, let's be clear, the total universe of the Big Five is still bigger, because and this is, I'm just being honest about both the benefits and the shortfalls of, there are some people who are not Amazon customers. I mean, 3 of them, I think, living in a hut in Indonesia somewhere.
They're on an island off here on the coast of Maine, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But there, there are people who say, no, I don't want to do business with Amazon, and it's perfectly respectable and perfectly fine and wonderful. And of course, whereas Amazon Publishing is concerned, hey, that's fine. Amazon Publishing is officially agnostic about where you buy your book, as am I. I mean, buy it from the independent bookstore, buy it from Barnes. I'm just pleased that you would want to buy it at all. But they ultimately do have that big muscle behind them of Amazon. However, the big five, they still have access to Amazon customers too. But they also have perhaps a better outreach to Barnes & Noble, better outreach with. So I think a big five book can perhaps be bigger overall, but the Amazon authors I think are reporting. Look, with the big five, you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, right? And with Amazon, they make the lightning. And that's the difference.
Yeah, and they sort of never stop marketing it. I've heard that. There isn't like some big push, and a year from now, I'll be seeing interference show up on my Kindle, when they decide the time is right.
Right. Well, and so that's also an exciting thing from an author standpoint of, with the big five, it is all about, frankly, the New York Times bestseller list. Or I can't say all about it, but that's the push, right? The push is try to get the book on the Times list, and then everybody sees it on the Times list and starts buying it. And well, how do you do that? Well, the push has to be leading up to publication day, because all of those pre-sales all count in the first week of publication, right? And so this can be the way to get a book really in front of people. Where Amazon, they're not so concerned about, so first of all, the New York Times, and you're perhaps aware of this, Amazon publishing books do not, for the most part, make the New York Times list, because the New York Times, wrongly in my mind, has decided that if most of the book sales come from one channel, they ignore it completely, which is a bizarre decision to me, because it's like, is this the bestseller list or not? Like, what is the, is this truly the most number of books are selling? And what you're saying is, I'm going to ignore 40% of the book buying universe, because I think that's about what Amazon has right now in terms of market share. And I'm just going to put blinders on and pretend that doesn't exist. That to me, and here I'm speaking as an ex-journalist, like a journalist, you're here to tell the truth, and you're here to, like, what's actually going on, and to say we're going to ignore 40% of the world because we don't like it. Yeah, a little weird to me, but yeah, that's so hey, get on the phone to the Times and put that complaint in for me, Len, will you?
It's time for another interview. Well, now, and the other aspect of it is the bookstores,
right?
Because will Barnes & Noble be carrying your book on tables? You can probably buy it at bnn.com.
Yeah, I think you could go to a store and say, I would like this book, and they would say, okay, great. But and I don't blame Barnes & Noble for feeling this way, but Amazon is their biggest competitor. Let's be realistic. Yeah. And why would they carry books from their biggest competitor? I get that. And and it's been interesting to watch independent bookstores kind of make up their own mind on this. Some of them have said, look, Amazon is eating my lunch. I am not going to, market or sell one of their books and help them, basically. And other independent bookstore owners have said, you know what? If I can sell a book, I don't care who publishes it. If it's something my customers want, I'm going to give it to them. And so, and again, I totally respect whatever decision people come around to. I'm just trying to write the best book I can, Len.
Yeah. Well, I remember after I spoke with you last, it was interesting to find out that you were going to be in Austin for a reading. I think it was during South by Southwest in March of 2018, and they paired you with Chad Zunker, who was an Austin writer. And at that time, he had a book or two out from Thomas and Mercer, and it was a small audience. I thought that what I remember is that you and Chad had gone to supper before the reading, and you came in kind of like old friends. There was a lot of, I don't know, it seems like you sort of hit it off. And when I saw that you had signed with Thomas and Mercer, I wondered, did you learn anything about Thomas and Mercer or the whole experience at that meeting of Chad that resulted in this happening?
Chad had been sent specifically from Thomas and Mercer to woo me. No, it's funny because Chad references that Austin, we were at Book People in Austin. He references that a lot because I think Chad had done maybe 2 or 3 events and I had done like 200 or 300. So
they were flying you all over the place, right?
So, he was joking that, he felt like he was with P.T. Barnum, on the other side because look, I've got my act down, I've got my spiel, I got my jokes, everything like that. And he's looking at me like, what? Who is this guy? So, yeah, we've since become friends. But, to be honest, Chad and I certainly did talk about Thomas and Mercer that night. I have been talking with a lot of people about Thomas and Mercer over the years. I kind of kept my eye on them because they actually started, or Amazon Publishing started in 2009, which happens to be the first year I published my first book. So we kind of came into the world together, and I was with St. Martin's Press at that point. But I'd always just watched them and been so a friend of mine, Hilary Davidson, who also switched from the Macmillan universe to Amazon a few years back. She called me Amazon Curious, which I think was very and I'm always interested in people who do things a different way. Right. And like Big Five Publishing has been doing things a certain way for a long time, and it has worked for them sometimes, and it doesn't work for them sometimes. And kind of like, okay, so what is going on over there, and how? And I don't know. I finally got curious enough that it was time to find out. And it helped. So I'd been with Dutton, which is a wonderful, wonderful publisher, but the two people who had signed me at Dutton both left. And so, in the business, they call it being orphaned. And don't get me wrong, I was treated very, very well at Dutton. I have no complaints or anything like that. But at the same time, when the people who brought you to the dance are gone, that's maybe a time when you do look around and say, okay, what other dances are out there? And that's kind of a part of what led me to Thomas and Mercer and Amazon Publishing.
Well, I'm sure you can't reveal much about the financial aspects of the switch, but I've always assumed that the royalty deal at Amazon Publishing was more favorable in general than the Big Five. When you combine that with the marketing power, and do you expect to make twice as much money on this book as you did on Closer Than You Know, based on the experience of that book? Or?
I don't know, Len. We'll find out. So I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here. And I don't mind talking about the financial aspects as long as it doesn't bore readers too much. But one of the fundamental differences between the Big Five and Amazon Publishing, well, at least for people not named Dean Koontz, is, the Big Five still gives the traditional advance, where you're going to make most of your money ahead of time, right? Whereas at Amazon, they say, okay, yeah, we'll give you an advance because I guess we have to, but you're going to make most of your money on the back end, right? And so I'm at a point right now where I don't know what kind of money Interference is really going to make. Dutton certainly paid me very nicely, and that was great. But I would know on launch day, this is what I'm going to get paid for this book. And maybe someday it will earn out, and maybe someday I will get a royalty. But I kind of knew what I'd been paid, and now I have no idea, which, yes, makes doing things like your taxes something of a challenge, because it's like, okay, what estimated quarterly payment should I put in?
Wow.
Oh boy, I don't know. So yeah, it's a different way of doing things. So I think this has been publicized. They do have a different royalty rate on ebooks, where the Big Five royalty rate is 25% and the Amazon Publishing rate is 35%. However, Amazon Publishing sells your ebooks at a much lower price. So you're getting 35% of a smaller number versus 25% of a larger number. And to be clear, and I think, and I'll tell this to the Kindle Chronicles, because I think a lot of people don't understand this. The hardcover novel, the thing that Big Five Publishing has sold for many, many years, has always been the largest margins, the best, that is the fatted calf of Big Five Publishing. That $25 book, that thing that you could use as a doorstop, that physical product, only ever cost them $2.50 to print, ship, store, the whole thing, $2.50. The rest of that $25 really was the people, right? It's the editor, it's the copy editor, it's the marketing person, it's the salesperson, it's all this, and by the way, and the author, right? And so their costs didn't change that much when it became, this is no longer a physical product, this is a virtual product. And so people are like, ebooks should be free. Well, no, because what you were paying for was never the physical product. It was always the people behind the product, right? And that's why that $11.99, $12.99 ebook is really kind of here to stay from the big five. Now, Amazon, of course, taken a wildly different approach to things, as they tend to do. And
because yours is it $3.99?
Yeah, $4.99, I think, something like that. They are saying we are going to make much less of a margin on this book, but we're going to sell a lot more books. And that's been there. So, or at least that's the plan. Again, Len, we'll find out. I'm on launch day right now. I don't know how this is all going to work out.
Yeah. Well, the pre-order number being as big as it is, that gives you some idea of what's coming.
Sure.
Just because you can count those.
Yeah,
books.
no, that will certainly help. But ultimately it is, how does this thing do out in the universe? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've read enough of it to know it's a hell of a story.
I made
the mistake of reading some of it last night at 3 a.m, and I said, no, I got to get some sleep. I get grandchildren coming over today, but it's that strong a story, and I love that it's set at Dartmouth, which is where you were an undergraduate. Did you return there to do some visiting the physics department or updating?
Yeah, so
of that
I actually did. So so my wife and I met at Dartmouth, more than 25 years ago now. I'm not sure how that ever happened, but because we both kind of have an affinity for the area, we actually go up to New Hampshire every summer. My wife gets a job at a little summer camp there, and my kids go to the camp, and it's all in a lake in New Hampshire, and it's absolute heaven. Obviously, COVID destroyed it this year, like it's destroyed everything else we love, but that's another subject. Yep. But for the last 5 summers, we had been going up to New Hampshire, and the camp is about 25 minutes from Dartmouth. So I had been able to kind of go back and refamiliarize myself with the area. And I had written it mostly from memory, and then we got up to New Hampshire for the summer, and I realized I had made the building that housed the physics classrooms, I had made it a 4-story building. It was, in fact, a 3-story building. No. And so I had to change the 4th floor to the 3rd floor and the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. So that was the one thing that I was glad I had been able to truth squad that a little bit, because there would have been some about 50,000 Dartmouth alums out there who probably would have remembered that I had screwed that one up.
Exactly.
But a lot of it was still the beauty of 250-year-old school, whatever Dartmouth is. Things don't change a lot, so it's kind of more or less the same place. And it was fun to spend time there in my imagination. I spend a lot of time in the places where I set my books, and so I might as well set it in a place that I'm really fond of. And of course, I love Dartmouth College.
Yeah. Well, it's a special place. It's I think my grandfather graduated from there, and it's pretty cold in the winter, though, compared to... It's
pretty cold in the winter, and when your grandfather graduated, they didn't have women there. And that's true. I could never understand the old Dartmouth alums who would grouse about the fact that they admitted women. It's like, guys, when it's February and the temperature is never going above 0 degrees for the weekend, trust me, it's really awesome to have women down the hall. Okay? You're not, those guys used to skid down Route 91 to Smith College for the weekend or something like that. Like, no, why would we do this? So yes, things definitely improve with time.
It's definitely progress. Now, Dean signed for 5 books with Amazon. Right. Are you saying how many books you signed?
I signed a 2-book deal.
2 books. So, okay. Yes. Any chance of Carter Ross returning in your Amazon incarnation? Was there any discussion?
We'll find out. I would like to. So yes, for those who don't know, I wrote 6 books in the Carter Ross series. I have not given up on Carter by any, I didn't kill him. He's still out there. My last 4 books have all been standalones, including Interference, of course. And I know the next one will be a standalone as well. But I always kind of leave the door open for Carter Ross. It's a little tricky for Amazon because they did not publish the first 6, but I would love to write Carter again someday. And, I think I've kind of been waiting for the story that Carter needs to tell versus somebody else needs to tell. But, that is Carter Ross number 7, I hope will happen someday, for sure.
And can you say anything more about the next standalone, when it's going to come out, what it's about?
Yes, the title is Unthinkable. And as in all my books, it's kind of an ordinary, relatable character. This is just a regular stay-at-home dad who is approached one day and told he either has to kill his wife or 1 billion people will die.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Hang on to your seat with this one, Len. It's a good one.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, that's terrific. I have been speaking with Brad Parks, author of Interference, a novel published this week by Thomas and Mercer. Thanks very much, Brad, and good luck with the new book. It's very exciting.
Yeah, Len, fun chatting with you as well. Enjoy those grandchildren later.
Next week, my guest will be Erica Bauermeister, author of The Scent Keeper and House Lessons, Renovating a Life. 2 great books that I'm reading. Darlene's the one who put me onto them, and it's going to be fun to talk to the author next week. I had a great birthday party here last weekend, and some of you may have stopped in to hear the Jim Robitaille Trio. I had them streaming up from Massachusetts to the party here under a tent next to the cottage, and you can hear, there's about an hour or more of this really fine jazz music that's available on Facebook. And if you'd like to listen in, look on Facebook for a private group that is named Len's Birthday Bash and ask for an invite. That'll come to me, and I'll give you the invitation so that you'll be a member of the group. And at that point, you'll be able to find the live stream, which is now a video that anyone can play. Boy, they just were great. As a bass player and Jim on guitar and a drummer, and they were in a studio somewhere down in Massachusetts playing through the miracle of the internet in Ocean Park, Maine on August 30th. So far, it's great to be 70, and just really had a fun party. The small group of us all in the same bubble in the family, having lobster rolls and chicken salad and listening to some cool, really cool jazz. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you stopping by for the Kindle Chronicles. We'll talk to you next week.